In the 10-year outlook, we are looking very much at climate-related risks as still the number one concern. So risks like the adverse impact of artificial intelligence are fairly low down in the 2-year outlook. I think as we enter 2024, fairly pessimistic outlook. So in terms of the overall outlook for the next 2 years and the next 10 years, we see that there's a progressive worsening of that outlook. So for example, there's about half of the people that were surveyed felt that in the next 2 years we're sort of on the precipice of fairly severe risks, and another 30% that felt that we were on the precipice of catastrophic risks potentially unfolding. And when you look at 10 years out, that 30% grows, that grows to nearly 60%. So 2/3 of the people are expecting that the outlook is incredibly negative in 10 years' time. And that is to some extent, not quite the full reverse, but quite different from last year, where in the longer term, there was still optimism, whereas this year, in the longer term, there is pessimism. We also this year looked a bit differently at some of the things that in the past we have continued to examine as part of the risks list. This time we're actually thinking of them as longer-term structural forces that are unfolding. So for example, we're no longer looking at climate change as one of the risks. We are now looking at climate change as one of the structural forces that is already unfolding and within which the rest of the risks need to be analyzed. Similarly with geostrategic shifts, similarly with demographic changes, so aging societies in many parts of the global north, very young societies in many parts of the global south. So those are and of course, technological acceleration. So we see all of that as part of the background and then look at more specific risks. So within that list of more specific risks, we have in the 2-year time frame, mis and disinformation as the number one risk, followed by extreme weather, followed by societal polarization, interstate armed conflict. That's the top 5 in the 2-year outlook. Very closely followed by lack of economic opportunity, inflation, involuntary migration, and economic downturn and pollution. So a mix across all 5 types of risks, but very much driven by these concerns around what's happening in our societies due to mis and disinformation. Now, that said, in the 10-year outlook, we are looking very much at climate-related risks as still the number one concern. So top, extreme weather. Second, concern around critical change to Earth systems. This is a new risk, and it comes in at number 2 in the 10-year time frame, followed by natural resource shortages, and then again, the continued risk of mis and disinformation at number 5, so still remaining within the top 10. Perhaps one final piece around the outlook in the report, or the high-level overview in the report. Risks like the adverse impact of artificial intelligence are fairly low down in the 2-year outlook. So that's where we're seeing that as number 29 out of the 34 risks in the 2-year outlook, but it jumps up to number 6 in 10 years' time. So deep concern around the short-term crises that are absorbing leadership today, simply not leading to the kind of planning that can deal with some of these longer-term risks, and things like artificial intelligence or the adverse impact of artificial intelligence jumping up into the top 10.
In my conversations with the companies, 2 issues consistently come up as current key concerns, and it's the impact of artificial intelligence, and it is supply chain challenges. That's what companies are concerned about right now. And these are also notable risks highlighted in this year's Global Risks Report. AI-generated misinformation, cyber attacks, and cyber insecurity have emerged as top risks across all time horizons. And it's about time, if I may say so, because these risks have not been prominently featured in past years, which I think is surprising given our dependency on technology, but also the acceleration of digitization following the pandemic. And given the sudden accessibility of user-friendly interfaces like ChatGPT or larger-scale AI models or synthetic content to manipulate public opinion, it's no wonder that misinformation and disinformation is ranked as a top risk short term. The potential impact on elections worldwide over the next 2 years is significant, and that could lead to elected governments' legitimacy being put in question. And this, in turn, could, of course, threaten democratic processes, lead to further social polarization, riots, strikes, or even intrastate violence. The use of AI comes with so many fantastic opportunities, but businesses have to also consider the societal, economic, and security implications of using AI. And the success of this will depend on regular testing, updating, verification, and lots of upskilling and training. It's the only way that we can prevent strategic and tactical miscalculations by AI that could lead to catastrophic errors, reputational harm, or even significant liabilities. We also have to realize that these advances provide cyber criminals with new tools and pathways to exploit. In fact, you don't even have to be smart nowadays in order to be a successful cyber criminal. AI can create advanced malware. It can impersonate others for scams. It can poison AI training data, which is a very serious concern. But on the other hand, the good news is that AI can also be used for a better response to cyber attacks. It can process vast amounts of data, detecting patterns that humans may overlook. And AI can also automate many security processes, such as patch management to fix bugs and close security holes. But we have to recognize the fact that everything we use, such as water, electricity, the financial system, the communication systems, all of this is dependent on the integrity of incredibly complex networked computer systems. So cybersecurity is not about protecting a computer or protecting a file. It's actually more about making sure supply chains work and that society as a whole is up and running. But let's switch gears and talk a little bit about supply chains instead. 2 of the highest ranked short-term risks in this year's Global Risks Report relate to climate change and geopolitics, both of which impact global supply chains. Halfway through last year, supply chains looked as if they started to stabilize after the pandemic, and where companies had made shifts from a just-in-time strategy to a just-in-case strategy, we saw a more balanced approach develop. So we saw less stockpiling, smaller inventories, and companies relying more on supply chain's ability to deliver. So the attacks on container ships in the Red Sea has made passage through the Suez Canal both risky and very dangerous. And at the same time, on the other side of the world, the impact of climate change and lack of rainfall has made passage through the Panama Canal really difficult because capacity has been significantly reduced. And that means that it's a total crunch for companies trying to move goods around the world now. And diverting container ships to avoid the Suez and Panama Canals is costly and it adds time. And with the price increases to offset these increased cost of shipping, of course, we may well spark another round of inflation. So businesses must again turn their focus on stress testing their supply chain investments and growth strategies against these potential new disruption scenarios, because it's the only way that they can strike that balance between just in time and just in case. As humans, we are wired to look at what is exactly right in front of us, but we have to find a better way of balancing the short-term view of risk with the longer-term view of risk. We're entering into a new era of risk now. And it's time to be a little bit more creative and collaborative in our approach to building resilience.